have hosted the Adobe Live show for 3 years. I have interviewed 150 creative people, and let me tell you what no one tells you about the creative industry. So why did I start hosting the Adobe Live? And it started actually as me being a guest to the show. So 7 years ago, they were doing these interviews in person in the Adobe building in France. And I was asked to come and present my work as a fine art photographer. I remember being so stressed, and at the same time, I have a very fond memory of this time because it made me realize that my Photoshop, my photography, and my process was so good that Photoshop was actually asking me to come and talk about how I was using the software. And it gave me this boost of confidence and certainly helped me in my imposter syndrome for sure. And a few years ago, when COVID struck, they're actually starting these interviews again, and this time it was at a distance. Everyone was on Zoom, and it was every day. So they were really craving for guests and people to show their work and to share. And I came as a guest. I remember sending a very heartful thank you message for being so grateful to be there again. And they actually replied to me, "Hey, would you like to host the show?" And this is how it started. I started interviewing people. It was both interviewing creative people and also sharing about the software, my creative process. We had a lot of freedom in this show, and that's why I'm so grateful for the experience. So at this point, I'm both the host and the guest, so I know what it feels like to be on both sides. So let me tell you about all the people I have interviewed and what I've learned from them. Everyone was a creative person, and the only requirement we had was you have to use some Adobe sometime in your process, which is so easy when you think about everything, all the software they have. And we didn't even have to talk about the process. Sometimes we use just 10 minutes, 20 minutes at the end of the interview to really get into the software, but it was all about sharing their own process, their own art, and it was not very tutorial. It was really an open interview. So let's talk about what makes you stand out and how we actually picked the creative and the artist. So when I started interviewing the people, it put me into the situation of actually seeing other people being in my situation of being stressed and everything. And I quickly realized everyone was stressed out. There was no one showing up without imposter syndrome. And that was very interesting because from social media perspective, everyone seems so perfect and proficient and confident in the ability to talk, and that was actually not true at all. It was my job to help them be confident and talk about their work, and I really enjoyed it. But if they were by themselves, without someone asking questions and guiding the conversation and being friendly and everything, it would have been, I think, a disaster for most people, and a lot of people would even have refused to do it. It takes something else to be able to talk about your work. And showing up into this interview, being able to share your work, being able to be a professional is not just about creating awesome work. It's also about delivering it, being able to talk about it, being able to connect with clients. And I could really see the line between being an amateur and being a professional. Clearly, the most successful artists, creatives, were not about creating the best work. Everyone had really good work, But what makes you stand out is your ability to talk about it, your ability to share your process, to connect with someone. And that's really what makes the difference. Another thing that I found really surprising, and it was a constant, no one was really good technically. Let me explain. All of these artists we got were exceptional. They had a beautiful portfolio, beautiful clients, a unique style, something that we saw deserves some attention. And most people, when they came, they were saying, I'm doing this, but I just created my own recipe and my own way of making things, and it's not going to be very interesting technically for you as Adobe software. And it was really interesting to discover this, because I feel as creative, we always feel like we need to learn the new tool, the new cool feature, everything. And it's so true that these features helps you save time and be more productive, and sometimes they can help you achieve your vision. Most people were actually using very, very little of the software, but in a very simple way. And there was no fancy, no fancy crazy shortcuts, no crazy thing, but they all had their own process that they master. And I think this is what we need to remember. It's not about knowing everything, all the software very deeply. It's about knowing the process for what you want to create. Every one of these artists, I think when they came for the interview, it was also a good opportunity to teach them new tricks and new features. And I was not the technical Adobe person. I was the creative, passionate, fun person. And my colleague was more of the technical, knowing everything. And he was giving all the tips that they could implement into the process. But they had a very minimal use of the software. And as a person who tends to be overwhelmed by all the new stuff, so you don't need to learn the conventional way to do something. It was really more about creating, getting your own style. It was every one of these creatives were not so technical, but more focusing on creation. Whatever it takes, just make it, and then you will find a way later to make it more efficiently and maybe a better way to use the software. But it was never important for these people. It was never technical interviews. It was more about people and passion and creation. So it's a good reminder that tools are just tools. They're here to help us. You can be a great technical person and not a very great creative person. And I'd rather be a fantastic creative person than a technical person. What makes someone stand out, and how did we pick up the guest? For me, it was all about network and word of mouth. I would find some people on social media, but most of the time it was about connection. And I loved to use recommendation from other people, because then I know we have common interest, I know we have shared values. But social media, I did not use it as you imagine. We did not really care for the followers and for the likes and everything, but I was really looking at how cohesive the work was. When I arrive on your social media page, is it clear what you do? Are you a photographer? What is your style? If I look up to you on the internet, what do I find? And that was how I was picking most people. I wanted them to have a cohesive, clear style. I want them to be professional, full-time artists, and not amateur. I wanted people to share value and to share real life experience and on what it is to be a professional artist creative. That was very important. And I think also they had to be professional in the way they show up. There was the portfolio, how creative was the work, but also how professional they were, how responsive they were to our like request and question. Were they happy to come? Like, it sounds very silly, but I want to work with passionate people. It was such a great opportunity. Like, I mean, you can be paid to come and talk 1 hour about your work to me from your own home. In my opinion, that was such a beautiful opportunity. We had so much freedom. We could talk about anything we wanted. And I was very interested into invited people who were excited about this opportunity and just very happy to be here already. So that was my process for picking someone. But after that, there were people that we were inviting back, because I would say if you have a nice portfolio and some really interesting work, it was kind of easy to be picked, but it's not so easy to be called back. So what made the difference? And as someone who was called back ultimately for 250 shows, I think I can really understand what it is expected from a creative. And the people I wanted to work with again were someone I had a real connection with, someone that was genuinely happy being there, because why would I work again with someone that was not happy being there? It sounds very silly, but you cannot imagine the number of people who just did not care. I think we called back also the not egocentric people. Creatives, we tend to have a big ego. And I remember a guy particularly, like, he had a fantastic work, a fantastic body of work. I'm still a big fan of his portfolio, but as a person during the interview, it was just big ego, me, very unreliable, like almost cancel just before the live interview, just like very late, not very professional showing up. The portfolio was amazing, but the ego of the person was just unbearable to work with. And we worked with people who were happy to be here, and more importantly, who were sharing values to the viewer. I understand this is not for everyone, and being a host and sharing your work, you can be like the normal person, the normal artist, sharing your work, having a great portfolio, and we have a nice interview, and then it's bye-bye. But then if you are a person providing value, teaching actually something, being happy to be here, and wanting to support other creatives, this is what makes someone come back. When we had people coming back, this is really why they made a difference. It was not about just them being here and showing off. It was them being here and delivering value for the viewers. A last thing that I've learned is that very few people actually ask to be interviewed, and we had to chase these people. And I think creative people are not proactive enough into looking for clients, looking for opportunities for these kind of projects. It was paid, it was not like a free gig, so it was very, very interested. And I never had any request of someone asking me how to be a guest on the show. And this is actually how I got the interview the first time. I met a guy who was interviewed, and the first thing I asked was, how did you get it? Can you put me in contact with a person that could interview me? And very, very, very few people are actually doing this. So if you want to set yourself apart, I would say have a beautiful, cohesive portfolio, be professional, show up, be happy and grateful that this is nice, life is cool, and this was such a great opportunity. And connect with people. Even though it was Adobe and it was such a big company, the more important thing is that you connect with the people working there. And I feel we forget this. We think it's a big name, but it's actually a lot of passionate people working there, and it's real humans. And the connection you have, even with clients, with everyone, it's real people. So don't forget this. And I hope it was helpful. And voilà, bisous bisous.